Byron Allen. As usual, I'm going to point out some things that made my melanin tingle that I don't really hear a lot of people talking about. It's about to get heavy.
I started supporting Senator Obama long before Black America or anybody knew his name, right? Because he came to folks who had the capital to support. I was happy to support. And after he became president, I said, I'm not any different than anybody else. I have an agenda. My agenda is that I want for all Americans to have equal access to capital and opportunity, especially African Americans, the furthest left behind. So I said, I have two asks of you. I said, you just spent $700 billion to bail out the banks. And I want you to audit the banks and see if they're lending money to Black people, not minorities, Black people. Because minorities, that's defined as white women.
Yes.
And the new minorities, gay white men. But if you actually say, I'm going to audit you to see if you're lending money to Black people, Negroes, whichever decade you want to go to, you're going to see that we're not getting access to capital. And at that point, I had seen the data that unemployment under Obama's administration, unemployment for Black America had gone up and had gone down for white America, and home ownership had hit a 25-year low. Employment for Black America had gone up and had gone down for white America, and home ownership had hit a 25-year low. So I said that audit will send a very clear message to the banks to start lending money to Black folks, and they'll start digging Black people up out of graves and lending money to maintain their good standing with the United States government. And I said the Obama administration came to me because these big corporations were trying to get bigger. They were trying to buy bigger assets. And so the Obama administration came to me and said, Comcast wants to buy this, and Charter wants to buy that, blah, blah, blah. Are they good corporate citizens? And I said, do you want the Hollywood answer, or do you want the real answer? They said, we want the real answer. I said, the answer is not no, it's hell no. They're not good corporate citizens. They said, how do you figure? I said, well, the industry spends $70 billion a year licensing cable networks, $70 billion. And African-American owned media gets zero. And that's not fair. And they say, we hear that a lot, but what are you willing to do? They said people are afraid to speak up because of reciprocity, of repercussions. And I said, I'll speak up. And I said, but I'm going to do it in a way we won't have to deal with it anymore. So I filed these lawsuits that ended up being historic. I filed a $20 billion lawsuit against Comcast and a $10 billion lawsuit against Charter. And I said, listen, the other thing I want you to do is just understand that the United States government has over $1 trillion pension fund, over a T, government worker pension fund money. People who work for the government, over $1 trillion. Not one penny of that is managed by African Americans.
Wow.
And I just need you to make sure that, maybe 150 billion is in the hands of qualified African American money managers, because that's going to be invested in African American entrepreneurs in our communities, and that will create jobs in our community. And we can start to address the economic genocide by making sure you don't have access to a proper education, making sure you don't have access to capital. That equals genocide. I'm going to squeeze you out. I'm going to take the oxygen out of the room. I'm going to position you to fail. You don't have a proper education. You don't have access to capital. That's not predatory. You don't have opportunities. So I said those two things will change the game. Just notify the banks. I'm going to give you a report card on Black people and carving out about 150 billion of government worker pension fund money, a lot of it coming from people of color. And that did not happen, but that was my ask. That did not happen, but that was my ask.
Real simple. The cable industry, AT&T, DirecTV, Comcast, Time Warner, they spend about $50 billion a year licensing cable networks and advertising, with less than $3 million per year going to 100% African-American owned media. Now,
Viacom owns BET. It's not African-American owned. Part of the lawsuit is that, we state in the lawsuit that Magic Johnson's network is really controlled by Leo Hendry, who is white, and they don't pay sub fees to Magic's network. They pay it to Leo Hendry's network up. We also say that Revolt is controlled by Highbridge Capital, a private equity firm, and private equity firms are quite often predatory, looking for anywhere 15 to 30% return on their money. They control Revolt. Revolt is a private equity firm now run, or a part of it, the key management is a former Comcast executive named James Brown. Highbridge Capital is owned by J.P. Morgan.
Okay, so Byron, what is...
On the board of J.P. Morgan is the number 2 executive of Comcast, Steve Burke.
Okay, so what is...
Everybody needs to follow the numbers, follow the money. And if you look at the numbers and you look at the money, 100% African-American owned media, which is virtually extinct, doesn't receive any money.
What they do is they make token donations to people like Al Sharpton, the NAACP, the Urban League, and after taking those donations, they negotiated a fraudulent MOU that says this is okay for Black people to live by. What America needs to understand is that Al Sharpton does not speak for me. Al Sharpton does not speak for Black people. It's like I ask people, who's the white person who speaks for you? It's racist to even believe that Al Sharpton is the go-to person. Shame on you, Sony, for thinking sit down with Al Sharpton and that negates your racist emails about President Obama. So it's real simple. These token donations they make to him, as reported in the New York Post, allows them to have racial cover. This is why we're not getting enough advertising or any advertising from McDonald's and Coca-Cola and Chrysler and General Motors and AT&T. They don't spend any money with African-American owned media. Something that's very alarming, AT&T spent more money on Al Sharpton's lavish 60th birthday than they spent on Ebony magazine, the biggest African-American magazine in America, around 70 years, 10 million readers per month. AT&T spent only $30,000 on that magazine. Walmart has given money to Al Sharpton. Walmart doesn't spend any money in Ebony magazine, and they barely do business with me in a long-term partnership, and I'm constantly going back and forth with Walmart and Chrysler as well. So he is the least expensive Negro. Don't really do business with real African-American owned companies.
Something like that. I mean, when you say that about Al Sharpton, are you saying
The numbers are actual. The numbers are just follow the money. Don't do business with real African-American owned companies. Just make a token. Give him $50,000 and a bucket of chicken, and we're good. We won't have any problems with real African-American owned media. You should not be Chrysler. You shouldn't be giving him money and not spending money with me and others like me and Stevie Wonder's radio station here in Los Angeles.
But aren't you trying to shake them down the same way by filing this lawsuit, which you know is not going to succeed?
Look, Brian, let's define a shakedown. He doesn't give anything in return. I am a legitimate businessman. I am one of the largest independent producers of television and media in the world. I have 36 television shows on the air and 7 24-hour HD networks. They're not letting us participate in the $50 billion that they spend on licensing and advertising. There's a very big difference. He's the shakedown. I'm the legitimate entrepreneur. We have to make sure that...
some of your programs are now...
If I may interject for a moment, do you remember when we did the post about the word network and TBN, and one of the preachers was saying that they felt bad about bringing a boycott up for the word network because Al Sharpton had a show? It seems like Al Sharpton is funded by a lot of people doing racist shit against us, and people that have been subject to said racism are reluctant to bring suits against these people because Al Sharpton is coming out publicly in solidarity with these racists. Let's continue.
He's a host on MSNBC and one of America's most prominent outspoken civil rights activists. And now Al Sharpton, along with Comcast and Time Warner Cable, are facing a $20 billion lawsuit over alleged racial discrimination against black-owned media companies. Now, in the complaint, Byron Allen, a comedian, TV presenter, and CEO of Entertainment Studios, alleges that Comcast gave Al Sharpton that 6 p.m. show on MSNBC, for which he's been paid approximately $750,000 per year, despite notoriously low ratings, and in exchange for his continued public support for Comcast on issues of diversity.
He's nothing more than a black pawn in a very sophisticated white economic chess game. He's being used by his white masters at Comcast and AT&T. He just needs to shut up and get in the bleachers. What we have to do is get these corporations to understand you must include African-American owned media. We have to stop the financial genocide against the black community.
You understand how offensive this all sounds to someone like Al Sharpton?
Well, I'm not worried about his feelings. I'm more focused on getting corporate America to understand it's time to do business with us. And President Obama has been bought and paid for. He has taken donations from Comcast. Comcast is his biggest contributor. AT&T is one of his biggest contributors. But listen, Obama, your own FTC is investigating AT&T for throttling. How can you even consider them to buy DirecTV when you're suing them? Is it because you took donations? Yes, Obama. Don't even think about letting them merge until they settle this lawsuit and that lawsuit. Comcast got caught... Well, let me, Brian, this is important.
Your main issues here are about the mergers, Comcast, Time Warner Cable, and AT&T DirecTV.
No, Brian, let me be clear. My main issue is about economic inclusion for African Americans. Comcast deployed software that slowed down video over the web in 2008. They broke federal laws. That's like me robbing a bank, and then after I get out on probation saying I want to be the president of the bank. Obama has to do more. I'm very proud of what Obama has done for the gay community. I'm very proud that he has achieved gay marriage. And if you can do that, you can achieve economic inclusion for all Americans, especially African Americans who have been left the furthest behind. Obama, you bailed out the banks. The banks you bailed out don't even make commercial loans to African Americans. Obama, you bailed out the car companies. Those car companies don't advertise with people like me and people like Ebony magazine. Obama controls close to $2 billion in advertising. Join the Army, join the Navy, join the Marines. We, as African Americans, do not receive.
So we took him to court in downtown. One of the judges ruled in Comcast's favor twice, and the other judge ruled on the Comcast lawsuit, and the other judge ruled in our favor on the Charter case. Charter didn't like it. They said, let's go to the Ninth Circuit. I said, well, if you're going to take me to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, I'll take Comcast to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Wow. So we went to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then something historic happened. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in our favor not once but twice on both Comcast and Charter. Comcast was very upset about it and said, well, we're going to take this to the Supreme Court. And now... That's going on now. That's going on now. Now we're going to be in the Supreme Court November 13th. What happened was the Supreme Court said, we're not going to look at the Byron Allen case with Comcast and Charter. We pretty much agree with the Ninth Circuit. That's a dispute between you guys. But we are going to look at the Civil Rights Act of 1866, Section 1981. So we were freed pretty much December of 1865. And instead of getting what some historians believe, reciprocity, 40 acres and a mule, we got this law. We got this law, and basically it says we will have fair contracting, economic inclusion in government contracting and in commercial contracting. because they knew that the newly freed slaves, African Americans, were not going to be treated freely in commercial contracting and government contracting, and it was essential for us to be integrated into the financial fiber of America. So this law was put on the books 153 years ago to make sure we had an economic pathway for economic inclusion. 150, it's the very first civil rights statute in America. It gave birth to civil rights, and it is the civil rights statute that allows us to have economic inclusion and stop economic genocide. So what Comcast said, and the Ninth Circuit told them to get out of here with this, Comcast said, in order for you or Byron or anybody, any minority, to use this law, you must prove that the reason we discriminated against you is 100% because you are black. The sole reason we discriminated against you, Charlemagne, is that you are 100% of the reasons that you're black. It could be 99% that you're black and 1% that you're wearing tennis shoes. And you can't use the law. You can't bring the lawsuit against me. So they're eviscerating it. They're making it impossible for you to use it. Right. Now, that is called the but-for standard. That is what Comcast and Charter, that's what they're pushing for. They're pushing for this civil rights statute to go away. Now, what the Ninth Circuit said in favor of black folks and all minorities, Hispanics, Asians, everybody, that it's not the sole reason, which is the but-for, it's the motivating factor. Okay. If any part of the reason, if they discriminated against you...
It would be impossible for it to be 100%.
But there it is. It's impossible. So it can't be used. So if it's 20% or 30%, any part of the reason, now you can use it. So that is why we're in the Supreme Court. Now, here's what's happened. Comcast went and got what's known as an amicus brief, a friend of the court, got Donald Trump's Department of Justice to write them an amicus brief saying, yes, let's roll minorities back to 1865. Let's take those Negroes back to slavery. So I thought...
and they're actually putting that on the books?
Donald Trump's DOJ wrote an amicus brief in favor of in favor of Comcast's position against us. And not only that, which we thought was unbelievable and hideous, something we've never seen. Comcast said, well, listen, we have 30 minutes in front of the Supreme Court, and Byron has 30 minutes in front of the Supreme Court. But you know what we're going to do? Comcast, this is what Comcast says. We're going to give 10 of our 30 minutes in front of Donald Trump's Supreme Court. We're going to give 10 of our 30 minutes to Donald Trump's DOJ. So now, on November 13th, we're standing in the Supreme Court in a Donald Trump era where we've got Donald Trump's DOJ arguing against us to take the first civil rights statute and eviscerate it. So here's what they say. Hey, Byron, drop the case.
Right, that's what they're trying to make you do.
Drop the case. Drop the case, and we might meet with you. We might work with you. Well, that's a racist offer. That's a I think you're nothing more than a monkey, and here's a banana. Settle the case, and then it's dropped. Right. And so they didn't come to
There's no offer of a settlement.
Whatever it is, you settle it up. My government relations person went to the government relations person of Charter, and he said you should sit with Byron to resolve this. And she said to him, we don't negotiate with terrorists.
Whoa.
Okay, that's what she said. And he said, you know what? I have a number of white clients who are much tougher than Byron, and you've never called them a terrorist. This is civil rights. Now someone can fire you, and you can't get a lawyer. That's the reason why the Chamber of Commerce gave them an amicus brief, because they didn't want their businesses to be sued. So now now you can't get a lawyer to take your case on contingency, because it's hard to prove that 100% of the reason you were discriminated against. Damn near impossible. So they don't want that law there to be used. So I say the moment people can discriminate against you and you can't hold them accountable, I say 3 words. Welcome to hell.
So after seeing all of that, I just want you to follow my thought process here. Follow me. This is a deep rabbit hole. Byron Allen donated money to Barack Obama's campaign. Barack Obama gave him nothing of what he asked for. He only asked for 2 things, and Barack came through on none of those things, even though Byron Allen came through with his donations. Barack asked Obama for 1 thing, and that was the Comcast situation. Byron Allen puts himself, his financial self, his reputation, and everything on the line to sue Comcast to make a better work environment, playing field for the rest of us. And now this has gone on strategically so long that the Supreme Court is now stacked with Donald Trump worshipers. Those are his saints. So I don't have the answer for this, but I do not feel that we should leave Byron out there on a limb. Now, I don't vote. And as you can see with this whole Obama situation, you can see why I don't vote. Why you got to give me my reparations before I even think about coming out to vote. But anyway, I think the best thing we could do is just show our support for Byron by cutting if you have Comcast and not watching anything on NBC. Those are the 2 things that, the only thing I can see, we could show our support by cutting it. by cutting their money, our subscriptions. And they're already in a battle with 50 Cent over power. So it's two birds with one stone. Family, Comcast is attempting to repeal and reverse civil rights laws that were put in place in 1865, all to strong arm Byron Allen, because Byron Allen has already won a lawsuit against them. So now, because they can't win that lawsuit, they're strong arming him with this. That's unacceptable. Now, the court date is November 13th of this year. That's not long from now. So if we all cancel all of our subscriptions to Comcast Cable, and if you, let's say you have your internet and your cable, let's say you can't, let's be reasonable, let's say you can't cancel both. You cancel your internet or you cancel your cable, reduce your bill drastically so they can lose money. Okay? So we can stand in solidarity with this brother, so they can understand that we're not with this shit. You cannot dangle our rights to get to strong arm someone into reversing a lawsuit that they won. We can't have that. Cancel your Comcast today.